heart of rural America, where long stretches of road crisscrossed through the dark abyss of night, there stood a gas station that time had forgotten. It was an unassuming place, with flickering fluorescent lights that did little to penetrate the heavy shadows lurking within. This was Midnight Gas, a name whispered in hushed tones by locals, a place where the brave and the foolish sought refuge for their empty tanks and grumbling stomachs. One crisp autumn evening, a weary traveler named Sam found himself on that desolate stretch of highway. His gas gauge hovered dangerously close to E, and his stomach rumbled in protest. The glowing neon sign of Midnight Gas emerged like a beacon of salvation, promising fuel and a hot meal. Sam pulled into the station with a sigh of relief. The wind whispered through the skeletal branches of the nearby trees, creating an eerie symphony that sent a shiver down his spine. As he stepped out of his car, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He glanced around, but there was no one in sight. The gas station's windows were caked with grime, and the once red paint had faded to a sickly shade of pink. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of old motor oil and burnt coffee. Sam noticed a solitary figure behind the counter, a gaunt, elderly man with sunken eyes that seemed to hold a lifetime of secrets. "Fill her up," Sam muttered, handing over his credit card. The old man nodded silently and began pumping gas. Sam wandered through the dimly lit aisles, searching for something to eat. The shelves were sparsely stocked, and the canned goods looked like they had been there since the 80s. As Sam perused the faded posters on the wall, he noticed something peculiar, a missing persons poster featuring a face that sent a chill down his spine. It was his own face, staring back at him from the weathered paper. His heart pounded in his chest as he turned to confront the old man. "What is this? What's going on?" Sam demanded. The old man's lips curled into a sinister grin. "You've stumbled into Midnight Gas, traveler, a place where lost souls find no escape." With that, the lights in the gas station flickered and died, plunging Sam into darkness. Panic clawed at his throat as he fumbled for his phone, the only source of light in the void. But when the screen illuminated his surroundings, he realized he was no longer in the gas station. He stood in the heart of a vast, moonlit forest, the trees towering like ancient sentinels. The ground beneath his feet was soft and damp, and an icy wind sent a shiver through his bones. The eerie silence was broken only by the distant sound of whispering voices. Sam stumbled forward, following the ethereal voices that seemed to call to him. Through the trees, he spotted a flickering light, like a beacon in the night. As he drew closer, he realized it was a campfire surrounded by shadowy figures. They turned to him, their faces obscured by darkness, but their eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light. They chanted in a language he couldn't comprehend, their words echoing in his mind like a sinister incantation. Sam tried to run to escape this nightmarish place, but he was rooted to the spot. The figures closed in, their hands reaching out to claim him. As their cold, bony fingers closed around him, Sam's world dissolved into a swirl of darkness. Back at Midnight Gas, the lights flickered back to life, and the gas station appeared exactly as it had before. But Sam was nowhere to be found. To this day, travelers passing through that desolate stretch of highway speak in hushed tones of Midnight Gas, a place where reality blurs with the unknown and where the lost find no escape. They say that on certain moonless nights, you can still hear the whispers of those who never returned, echoing through the trees, a haunting reminder of the terrors that lurk in the darkness. Fortunately for Sam, that at dawn, everything around him disappeared, and he managed to escape miraculously. David hated working the night shift at the gas station. It was boring, lonely, and sometimes creepy. He had to deal with drunk drivers, rude customers, and occasional robbers. But the worst part was the stranger. Every night, around 3 a.m., David would notice a dark figure standing in the shadows across the street. The stranger never moved, never spoke, never blinked. He just stared at David with an eerie intensity that made him shiver. David tried to ignore him, but he couldn't help feeling uneasy. Who was he? What did he want? Why did he always come at the same time? David wondered if he should call the police, but he had no evidence of any crime. Maybe the stranger was harmless, just a weirdo with nothing better to do. One night, David decided to confront him. He grabbed a flashlight and a baseball bat and walked out of the gas station. He crossed the street and approached the stranger, who didn't seem to notice him. "Hey, you!" David shouted. "What are you doing here? What do you want from me?" The stranger turned his head slowly and looked at David. His eyes were cold and empty. His face was pale and scarred. His mouth was twisted in a sinister grin. He didn't say a word, but David felt a surge of fear and disgust. He backed away, but the stranger followed him. He walked faster, but the stranger matched his pace. He ran, but the stranger ran too. He reached the gas station, but the door was locked. He had forgotten his keys inside. He banged on the door, hoping someone would hear him, but there was no one around except for the stranger. The stranger caught up with him and grabbed his shoulder. He spun him around and raised a knife in his hand. David screamed, but no one came to help him. He was alone with the stranger, who was about to kill him. But then, a loud siren pierced the air. A police car arrived at the scene, flashing its lights and honking its horn. The stranger dropped his knife and ran away into the dark. David collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. He couldn't believe what had just happened. He was alive, but he was terrified. The police officers got out of their car and rushed to him. They asked him if he was okay, if he knew who the stranger was, if he could describe him. David told them everything he knew, which wasn't much. The police officers nodded and told him that he was lucky. The stranger was a serial killer who had escaped from prison and had been hiding in the area for weeks. He had killed several people in nearby towns and had been looking for his next victim. They said they had been tracking him down and had received a tip that he might be at the gas station. They had arrived just in time to save David's life. David felt a wave of relief and gratitude. He thanked them for their help and asked them how they knew where to find him. They said they had seen his flashlight and heard his scream. They said they had been watching him too. Imagine this, a desolate highway that works endlessly during a black night. Your fuel scale reads empty, and there's only darkness in the future. Desperation begins when you discover the flashing neon sign of an apparently abandoned fuel station. You don't know, this is where our horror story starts today. When I arrived at the gas station, it looked like it was stuck in time, frozen in 1950. Rusty gas pumps, a dimly lit umbrella, and scary silence make your heart race. This is not the typical stop that was on your mind. You get out of your car, hold your wallet tightly. The bell rings over the door when you enter the dimly lit store. The only sign of life is an old man behind the counter, his eyes obscured by shadows. He grumbles about greeting as you approach. When you fill your sink, the station owner's look never leaves you. When you inquire about the bathroom, he mutters something about the other side and hands you an old key attached to a large wooden block. You follow the dimly lit corridor to the bathroom, where the key fits into an old lock. Inside, flashing fluorescent lamps reveal disturbing messages carved into walls covered with graffiti. It's like the walls themselves are trying to tell you something. Back in the store, I noticed that the station owner had disappeared. The bell over the door is still silent. Panic begins when you realize that you are the only one in this strange place. While waiting, you can explore the store and find shelves lined with exotic ornaments, antique dolls, mummified animals, and dusty old books filled with cody codes. It smells weird. I decided to ask for help, but your phone shows no signal. The only working phone behind the counter. With a sinking feeling, you can pick up the receiver and hear a sound whispering your name from the other end. As you try to leave, the sliding glass door of the gas station closes, locking you inside. The room gets colder and ghostly characters start to appear in the shadows, pushing you towards them. Terrified, I ran to the bathroom, hoping that the key you still have holds some evidence of your salvation. Inside, The walls seem to close, and scary messages become more persistent. You have to decipher its meaning before it's too late. Beating your heart, you finally assemble vague messages and open a hidden toilet driveway. As you tread, the gas station fades and you find yourself back on the highway, safe but haunted by the nightmarish ordeal forever. That's what happened with the owner of the story.